Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Melissa, and I'm the Senior Marketing Specialist at Tornatech. I would like to introduce to you Cole Rigney, our U.S. Regional Sales Manager, and Martin Tomasic, our Director of Sales. Now, let's enjoy the presentation.
Welcome, everyone, to our presentation. Let's get right into it. The OPD, Overcurrent Protective Device. This is a UL-listed disconnecting device. As you can see, the installation of a disconnecting means ahead of an electric fire pump controller has always been permitted by NFPA 20 and referencing NFPA 70/NEC. This is critical because it's been around for a long time and it's finally getting into this side of the business on our fire protection systems. The method of sizing is very simple. Typically, the disconnecting means must be able to hold lock rotor current indefinitely 6 times full load amperage. Again, most people have used fuses in the past, and that could be confusing sometimes because there are times where electricians aren't really totally familiar with the ruling and the law saying you must go 6 times full load amperage, because what you don't want is this to open up before the fire pump locked rotor situation trips offline. Okay, 9.2.3.4. Overcurrent protection permitted by 9.2.3 is installed. The overcurrent protection device shall be rated to carry indefinitely the sum of the lock rotor current of the largest pump and the full load current of all the pump motors and accessory equipment. In essence, what we're running across here in most cases, it's really the fire pump and the driver of the motor itself. That's what we're talking about here. 6 times full load amperage, locked rotor. Again, alternatively, compliance with 9.2.3.4 shall be based on an assembly listed for fire pump service. Comply with the following. This is key. Overcurrent protective device shall not open within 2 minutes at 600%. That's 120 seconds. The reason why is you don't want that to open before a locked rotor situation that the fire pump controller itself may see. And again, remember, fire pump controllers have lock rotor protection across the board. It's required. Locked rotor is 6 times full load amperage. And if the fire pump controller senses that between 8 to 20 seconds, it will trip the controller offline. This is a requirement. Again, 2 minutes. It's 120 seconds at 600%. Secondly, and this is huge, a restart transient of 24 times full load current. Not 5, not 10, not 15, but 24 times transient. That's a huge surge spike. So that will not trip offline. The third, overcurrent protective device shall not open within 10 minutes at 300%. And the last item is you are not allowed to have a field adjustment. That's the 4 key criteria for the OPD. Again, we can reference all these. I'm not here to bore you, but it's repetitive, rated to carry indefinitely the sum of the lock rotor current, 6 times full load amperage. This device being OPD, the circuit breaker design, is 120 seconds. And this just reiterates what I just mentioned. 2 minutes at 600%, restart 24 times, 10 minutes at 300, and cannot be field adjustable. The key for the OPD, as compared to a safety switch, fusible switches are acceptable, and that's fine, but you need to make sure, number one, that you're sizing the fuses properly. Number two, that you're using the correct size fuse for interrupting capacity. And typically, when you get into that size, 6 times full load amperage, your fusible switch is quite large, and you know how pump rooms are. They're not very big. This is going to take a large section of space on the wall, or however you're going to mount this, where an OPD is going to be maybe a third or less. And that's really critical when you talk about space. And it's a circuit breaker, so it can be reset. But the OPD itself is a UL-listed disconnecting device, the only one at this time that is to be used only with a UL-FM fire pump controller. That's the whole purpose of the OPD. That's why we designed it. I'm going to click through here a little bit. Let's get right into it here. Standard features. Obviously, It's SUSI rated, service suitable for service equipment itself, service entrance equipment. So this is going to go off the secondary, the pole, the pad mount, or the volt transformer direct from the utility, and it's going to go in between the source of the utility power and the incoming power of the fire pump controller itself. And it can be done on the normal side and the emergency genset side too. So this is key. You must have service entrance rating. It is NEMA 2 encased, exactly what a fire pump controller is too. NEMA 2 enclosure, which is like a drip proof. It's just light falling water. And again, the disconnect markings are per code here shown. It's got a flange mounted operator, a lockable door, and you can see the compactness of this already as compared to what a fusible switch, if you've encountered using a fusible switch, you could imagine the size difference it would be. The inside, very, very streamlined. Again, a case breaker. We have an operator coming off the front of the faceplate itself to operate the toggle. Again, it is a flange-mounted disconnect device. It's lockable, and that's the key. Lockable in the on position, lockable in the off position. And you do have a grounding lug. In some situations, municipalities, there are requirements. People want to see a neutral lug that is bonded at the grounding lug. That's an option. You know, let us know. We really don't run neutral for any particular reason because these units are sized based on horsepower and voltage of the motor, and those motors are 3-phase only. So there is really no need for a neutral, but sometimes we run into those requests by the local inspector, and it might be an electrical inspector who's your AHD there. Just let us know. Again, you see UL listed disconnecting means for fire pump controller from the incoming power. The key reason you do this is that when you have a main disconnect, and again, I'll mention fusible, I'll mention the OPD, and my preference would be OPD because it's more compact, it's more competitive, streamlined, and you don't blow a fuse and have to replace it. But again, one of the main reasons is that when you cut power off to a fire pump controller and you need to do any kind of servicing or even opening the door, you know, if you don't have a main disconnect ahead of your fire pump controller and it's hardwired direct to the secondary of the transformer from the utility, when you open that, even though you have the power off on the fire pump controller, you open that door, you still have 3 cables coming into the isolation switch itself that are hot from the utility. That is arc flash potential. And any good electrician will have a label on the front of the controller itself, and it will say, please do not open arc flash potential, contact us. Or if it could be an industrial facility or university or what have you, and you get into OSHA requirements, well, these are going to follow to the letter of the law. And in these cases, you need PPE, exactly what we're showing here, personal protective equipment, before you open the door. And you need to know what level of PPE you need. And that's pretty much done with a coordination study for the whole system to determine at that point what the fault capability is if you were to have an arc flash or a fault, either face to ground or face to face. So the cost of an OPD could be equal or less than having to buy PPE equipment for 1 or more people. That's huge. Literally, turn the OPD off, lock it out, go over, open your fire pump controller, and you could work on it with in a short sleeve shirt or t-shirt. Again, you can see it's UL listed. You got normal power, but also applicable for the genset or alternate power circuit too. Acceptable installation in Canada, same thing. So here's a typical schematic. As you can see here, the line side right here, genset right here. That is the ideal application because number one is you don't have to worry about incoming power. You don't have to deal with coordinating a shutdown with the utility company. And I've dealt with many cities across the US dealing with power facilities, power companies, and they'll tell you up front, we don't have the resources to answer the demand to cut power off at a facility and then come back and turn it back on based on your time frame. It's probably very rare. It's going to be based on their time frame. So again, having an OPD like this eliminates the need to even worry about contacting and coordinating a shutdown time with the local municipality or the power company itself. And usually across the country, you've got varying levels of cost. It depends on what city you're in. You may find out that the cost to have this disconnected and reconnected by the utility is equal or more than what the cost of installing an OPD would be. And that's key, because once you have that main disconnect in there, it's there for life. You can open and close it anytime you want, whenever you need to. And the key issue here is like, okay, I don't have to deal with the utility. I don't have to pay the cost. Really what it does is it isolates the fire pump controller only. And when you deal with the utility having to shut down power, you shut power down to the whole facility. And what happens when you have a 24/7 operation, whether it's manufacturing, it's an airport, 7-Eleven, it's a hotel, where you have that activity going 24/7, you got to cut power totally. And it makes it very difficult when you're trying to run a business. So the investment and the value an OPD brings as a main disconnect is unsurmountable. And again, it makes common sense to do it properly with the genset too.
And Marty, I'll just point out in this typical installation schematic, obviously you can see also that the jockey is tied into the OPD as well. But just say ideally these would be in the pump room as well. I don't know if code says anything about them having to be in the pump room. The same kind of code, where the pump and the control panel have to be within line of sight. I don't think there's anything specifically that says that, but ideally they would be in the pump room as well. Just so you can have your eyes on it, knowing that it's off when you're working inside the control panel.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of industrials have it, and they have a main. Again, it might not be the OPD, it might be a fusible switch, it might be in another room, and you have to physically go over there and lock it out. So I don't think there's anything by code, exactly what you said, Cole, that says it must be in a pump room. But when you get into a different location, there's other guidelines that you must follow. So to make it simple, which is what I always like, keep it simple. It's to your advantage to stay within 50 feet. Because I'm sure there's cable requirements if you're running through walls and what have you for fire, that you have to maintain. And if it's within the same room, within a short distance, you can save a lot of money by having it as compared to another location and having to run those cables through walls and so forth. But it's a very valid point. It's quite easy to order. As you see, OPD, the voltage. Go up to 600 volt, you need 200, 208, 460, 480. Go up to horsepower, 3-phase, 60 hertz. Again, the OPD is sized not by full load amperage. All that work and calculation has been done by our engineering facility, or by our engineering group at our facility. The OPD is sized by horsepower and voltage of the motor for the pump. It's like your fire pump controller too. Everything is sized accordingly, and all the criteria that's required by code is met. Exactly like I mentioned. 6 times full load amperage, 120 seconds. 10 minutes for 300%. 24 times transient and non-adjustable. So all that's been done. It keeps your life simple. One of the biggest things I found dealing with utility companies in presenting this product as an alternative for them is they come up and say, we've had so many situations in the past week or two where the electrician really isn't familiar and knowing how they need to size that disconnect. And it could cause a problem because you don't want that disconnect to trip offline. That's not the intent of it.
Right. Or they could oversize it so much and make it a lot more expensive. So that is definitely the benefit for us doing the work there, matching the horsepowers. Exactly.
Again, this tells it all. Our website has submittal packages, data sheets, dimensional, schematics, field connections, specifications for engineering. Now, again, the value add that this brings is tremendous. And there are cities out there that require a main disconnect. But who's to say whether you're an engineer or an end user or a fire sprinkler contractor that you can't add value to a job and put that as a proposal to the owner. Because one or two times of not having to cut power off to a building, or the cost involved, or again, I'm reiterating here, but it's important, the cost of PPE, it pays for itself. Now, there is a typical install. I showed you a schematic picture, block diagram. This is a real install. And it's a job site in Hawaii. Obviously, you can see normal power here, emergency power here, normal power transfer side. This was sent in by one of our customers. This is a really beautiful install. And the unfortunate circumstance, and Cole and I were just talking about this is one we missed out on. We were not able to make the trip to do a commissioning on this. They did it on their own, unfortunately. So, and that brings us to the end of our presentation. Just as a recap, the OPD, main disconnect for your fire pump controller, it's allowed by code. There are lots of cities in the United States that require a main disconnect, whether it's a fusible switch or an alternative solution with the OPD. What does it bring for value for you or your customers? It's very compact as compared to a fusible switch, more cost effective. You have a situation where you don't have to have extra backup fuses because they don't blow to replace a fuse. It's a circuit breaker. You, again, exceed the requirements. 120 seconds at 600%. 10 minutes at 300%. Will not trip if it sees 24-time transients, and it's not adjustable in the field. Those are the key attributes of this unit here. But by having that, it eliminates any coordination with the power company of getting the power disconnected to your facility and then reconnected based on their time frame or the lack of resources. Sometimes that doesn't work too well. Sometimes I've seen it where it's taken a week or more, and you want to do it a day or two. And secondly, it would eliminate the need for PPE. Just the cost of PPE itself could be more than sufficient of installing an OPD in place. So there is a lot of value.
All right, thank you, Marty, and thank you for everybody that has been sticking around throughout the whole presentation. Now stick around a little bit longer. After we get the slides down, we're going to have a short Q&A session.
Hope you enjoyed the presentation. Now let's get straight into the Q&A. We already have some questions to start, but don't be shy. Send in your questions. We're here to answer all of them. So the first one is, how would the OPD be purchased?
I'll answer that one. We're going to follow a similar chain as what we currently have, which is going to be going through the pump OEM reps. Typically, that's our main customer base, the pump OEMs and the pump OEM reps. So we'll follow that same chain. It'll be purchased through those guys.
Great. Next question is, how would you suggest adding this to a project that is being bid?
I'll take that one. As far as a project that's being bid, if it's not specified, you're not going to have it in your package originally, but what you can do is list it as an alternative value add, as an adder, and maybe a couple bullets of explanation. I think during our presentation, we pointed some things out, which is, brings a lot of value to an end user, but you would price it separately. And again, just, I guess a comment here is when you think about an OPD as a value add, you're only shutting down the fire pump controller and isolating that specifically, rather than shutting a customer's whole facility down for the time that's required to service or do repair work or whatever's necessary for the fire pump controller itself. So that's a lot of value add, because you don't have downtime on things that are operating 24/7, whether it's commercial or industrial.
Great. We have another question. Is there any alarm connection or output that confirms if the OPD has been shut off?
We could do that. Yes. You can get a contact that will send a remote signal if it's turned in the off position. Yes.
Okay. Next question is, how do you size the wiring of the normal and emergency side? Is that correct to use ampacity equals 120 5% of full load current.
Yes, you would size it the same way as you would size cabling going into your fire pump controller, which I think is 125%.
Will the OPD show up in different OEMs pricing selection programs?
That part I'm not 100% sure on. The OEMs do have access to purchase this, and we have sold through the OEMs, but I don't know if they're in the selection programs. I'm not sure if we've fully checked on that one. And I'd imagine they're all going to be doing their own thing.
And to add to that, Cole, also, I don't think it's in the pricing selection. This particular product seems to be similar to some other products that are out there where it's bought on a direct basis. But there are times where you will have it packaged in a larger project through the OEM, and we can do that. We've done that before. But to answer your question, it shouldn't really be listed in the pricing program itself. So it would be listed in our list price books that are available. But again, it's more of a direct purchase from us, but can be packaged with a pump OEM package itself.
Thank you. What about troubleshooting with live power still reaching the controller? Does the OPD offer any protection as far as mitigating arc flash damage?
That's a pretty good question. I'm not sure on that. I mean, if the power is still going into the control panel, I would think, there's still a potential for arc flash. But as far as mitigating it, I'm not sure. Marty, do you?
If you have your 3 cables coming in from the pole, the pad, or the volt transformer from the utility, you're not supposed to open the door. I mean, you need to have PPE equipment. You need to know the level of PPE you have before you even open the door, or you call the electrician. So anytime, even though your handle is in the off position of your fire pump controller, you still have arc flash potential because of those 3 cables coming into the main ISO switch of the fire pump controller. So that being said, as a base, the OPD completely eliminates arc flash potential when used in line from the utility power to the fire pump controller. It's just another main disconnect. Moving it ahead, your main power goes into the OPD. You turn that OPD off. You lock it out. Now you have 100% power completely gone from the fire pump controller. You can open the door and use whatever clothing that you may wear, whether it be a t-shirt or a shirt or a polo or whatever it is, because it completely eliminates arc flash potential when it's used in line and shut off for a fire pump controller. So again, that's where I mentioned, if I'm getting this correctly, that's where I mentioned it can save on PPE equipment, not having to have or purchase, I should say purchase and have when you're opening the door of a fire pump controller that has that arc flash potential. So it will completely eliminate it.
Great. Next question is there any work being done with either utilities or insurance providers to either recommend or require this type of disconnect?
I could tell you through the years, because this is a product that people need to be educated on. And I can't personally say insurance companies, but I can personally tell you I've met with a lot of power companies, some of the major cities, just as a educational presentation, not a selling presentation, because again, what we're talking about is a fusible switch or the OPD as an alternative. I've met with a lot of the major cities. The last big one I did was the city of Los Angeles, the power facility for the city of Los Angeles and Orange County. And they really enjoyed this. So I gave it to them as an alternative. So we are actively promoting this particular product, but COVID makes it a little bit more difficult. We haven't actively been going after at least I haven't, the power companies themselves at any of the major cities, I'd say the last 6 or 12 months here because of COVID. So, but we have, and we will continue to do so.
Perfect. Regarding the normal and emergency side of the fire pump, is the OPD sizing the same way?
Yes, it is the same. The emergency side has got same size isolation switch and circuit breakers as the normal side. So it's going to be sized the same way.
And that's what's nice about it. Like Cole mentioned, just to add to it, it's sized by horsepower and voltage, which is the fire pump motor.
Are you working with consulting engineers as they make the decision on specifying what goes into a project?
Yes. Again, similar to power companies, the fire consulting engineers or the electrical consulting engineers that work hand in hand, been actively pursuing and putting educational sessions, whether it's a national SFPE show, which is the Society of Fire Protection Engineers, or regional shows. That's all part of the educational process that we add for the OPD to the engineering community, because again, they do a lot of specifications. They need to be fully aware of this and really up to date that it's allowable, and it's probably a huge advantage for the customer. So yes, we have actively been pursuing the engineering community and educating them on this product.
Where would you mount the OPD?
Like we mentioned on that schematic, ideally you're going to mount it on the wall inside the pump room, where you can have your eyes on it. That way you know its position, whether it's on or off, because if it's on, you still have power obviously going to the control panel. So you don't want anybody turning that on outside of the room when you're working on the control panel. So ideally on the wall inside the pump room.
Now that I'm going to add one more too. That is ideal. I've seen fusible switches that were outside the pump room itself. Again, when you shut it off, you need to take precautionary safety steps. You lock it out. And then really inside, like Cole said, it eliminates any of the requirements that you need for fire rating by running cables through a wall or what have you from another room. So again, just reinforcing what Cole said, in the room is ideal because it's right there.
Another question is, what is the ship time for an OPD?
It's going to vary, and we're going to be able to do some of these quickly. Well, so I think the standard lead time is probably 20 days, Marty.
Yeah, I was thinking about 20 working days is about norm.
Yeah, it'd be similar to our control panels, but then, like I said, we always can do things quicker, but standard lead time is about 20 days.
Thank you. We don't have any more questions. We do have a comment, but before I go on to that, if you have any questions, now's the time to send them in. If you think of any questions at a later time, don't be afraid to email us. We're here to help you. You can email Marty or Cole, and they'll be glad to answer any of your questions regarding the OPD or any other product we have. So our comment we received here is, I wish NFPA 20 or 70E would put this into their code requirements. This is a life safety issue that has been ignored by the folk who should be enforcing this.
That's a very good comment.
Yeah, very good comment.
And a lot of this it's pure education. Again, we're promoting the OPD. That's why we have this webinar. It's a very unique product. It has a lot of advantages, but again, fusible switches are acceptable, but there's a gray area. And even, walking out of that presentation I did for the power company out in LA, I had two of the main people come up to me and go, the last 2 weeks we've had like 4 or 5 electricians come up to us asking, how do you size this? You would think that would be proper. And I'm not playing against electricians, but fire has a whole different guideline than the typical electrical side of the business. And I do agree with you there. One other comment too on the OPD, it is suitable for use as service entrance, SUSI rated, just like your fire pump controller. So it is service entrance rated. One thought is, you have an OPD on the job site, you can terminate your power cables coming from the utility. It's service entrance, it's landed, it's completed. That might also allow you to have sign off on the final for the electric if that's something that might be holding the job up too. And the fire pump controller can come later, even though it's service entrance rated, that OPD is ahead of it. So, you've already landed your main feeds to a service entrance disconnect itself. So
we have another question. Will you guys bring this to the NFPA committees to add to their codes?
I think we should.
I mean, it's not a bad idea.
I think we should. One of the feedbacks we've always gotten is you can't put it on a project job because it'll price you out. Well, you don't want to do that. You want to list it as a value add and list some of the things as we mentioned before. But I think that's a very good comment. I think that's something that we should look into. Thank you.
Another question came in. Can the OPD feed another load as well as the fire pump controller and the jockey pump controller?
Well, basically, if you look at the schematic we had, we only list the OPD for the fire pump controller. And you saw the schematic it had on the line side, or the secondary of the OPD and the line side of the cable coming in, there was a tap off for the jockey pump controller. So realistically, this particular unit itself is UL listed for use on ULFM fire pump controllers only. So anything that's beyond that, I'd have to say that it really wouldn't be applicable, because this is specifically the guideline of how we got it UL listed for use with ULFM. So anything that's non-fire potentially, no, I don't think so.
Okay. I think that's all the questions we have for today. Thank you everyone for attending. Please fill out the survey that will pop up after you exit. And just so you know, if you would like to review this webinar, you can always go back to our website. You go to www.tornatech.com/webinars, and you'll have this presentation along with others such as the flow meter, the GPX, the GPD, and even a presentation on our VisiTouch. So that's really a really great resource center for you to go back and review some presentations if you've missed something or you would like to review some other products. Oh, one last question, actually. Someone asked, how much does the OPD cost?
Well, there's I mean, it varies. There's varying list prices depending on the horsepowers. We can send you the list prices for those if you want to. I guess I'm sure we have your email.
We have the email, so we can send you a.
Sure. Every the way we're going to market, as Cole mentioned, is since this is part of the fire system itself, the OEM pump representative has multipliers to go against the list price for an OPD in varying sizes. So that can be done off screen here. But again, any questions like that, you should have that cost if we're dealing with electricians or anyone outside. I'm just going to reinforce what Cole had said too. The purchasing should be done through that specific local pump OEM pump representative itself. So
thank you everybody for attending. Again, this will be available on demand. You will receive an email if you're registered. When it's available, it should be available within 2 days. So thank you, and see you at the next one.
Thank you everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you. Bye.